어도고네나 너질러줘서 Kyabje Pema Norbu. Tomar try delay. Good night, QBS.
Tonight, to all of you for coming to this event, I want to wish you greetings and good evening.
Today, the Gondina Palyul
and tonight, I've been asked to talk a little about the intermediate state, so I will be talking on that a little bit.
Bardo Yar Sanjay Gobon Surgeon to Drum Matava Parudana Consul Roa Ritune Korhi Chamdiva. What wrong against St. Tonji? That a Negi Mandela. The Bardo Singers.
Generally speaking, when we talk about Bardo, the intermediate state, all sentient beings that wander in this cyclic existence and haven't achieved perfect enlightenment, they are in the state of Bardo, the intermediate state. The main reason why these ancient beings are said to be in an intermediate state is because they are in a transitory situation. They haven't got a permanent place to be. This concept must be placed in the context of the general Buddhist religious theme of law of cause and effect, karma, and of the concept of rebirth.
As
for those who don't accept the past and the future lifetimes, there won't be an intermediate state either. However, saying there isn't any past or future life wouldn't make the past and future lives disappear. That is because such things as past and future lifetimes are brought about by one's own karma. They are not just made by somebody.
When
we talk about the unfortunate realms of existence and the sufferings, they are all because they are all manifestations or outcomes of one's own negative actions. And when we talk about happy realms and enlightenment, they are products of one's own virtuous activities.
Dada ngaronso jiten kamdena ne dipiti kamdela tarongi Bardo na tenderes.
The state we are in as we live in this world, when we are living in this world, that state would be called as the natural intermediate state, the Rangshingi Bardo.
Tata mili tobne soni makti baji dusa teres tele tene cheshola Sanotona, Di Tisete, Hajonge, Kechamboji series.
So that state, the natural Bardo, is the one that begins with one's birth in this world until one dies. And that is quite crucial, especially from a religious viewpoint, because it is the effective state where one can practice religion.
Karetana, Jitendana Nupitikasu, Le Gevashinanda, Megevashinanda, Tin Jebote, Nasi Bardo, Rosso, Nyaremato, Dele Longanimba Yamaris.
That is so because it is when we live that we commit the positive, the virtuous, and the negative actions which will bring about the happiness and sufferings in the future. So the suffering and the happiness we have in the future totally depends on what we do now.
Ngaso Mane Jirendavo Tendeji Shibang Hindabo Mesumbategi Hamagore Mato Masi Shevandela Toma Candere Kadiri Ombare Lucas Long Mahiba Jeremato Seva Tometa Carva Tome Badilas Carva Rela Seva Donsul Tometri Long Tendesibi Carva Tome Badigine Tata Bata Kova de la Chamderes.
From a Buddhist viewpoint, we just don't have the clairvoyance to look back into the past and see what we have been and how many times we have lived. But in fact, there is no beginning in time. And we have lived for hundreds and thousands of kalpas, countless numbers of aeons. And even in one aeon, we have taken so many millions of lifetimes or rebirths.
Ti parla che mge naso di leki roa ritu soso le ni roru le nu le tanga ba je do sho yin ba jires.
So during all those times, because of the internal karma, the influence of the internal karma, we have the experience or the appearance of the 6 different realms of beings.
Yenayong Shevang Mahitsadi, Karena Sendi Chobanraji, Karena Chobanraji, de Tantiji Tongueris.
So we don't understand what the positive and the negative actions will bring about, what their consequences are, because we can't see the past and the future lifetimes. If we really know the situations in the past and the future, then we wouldn't be able to even sit. It has been taught in the Buddhist teachings that if all the bodies that we have taken in the previous lifetimes were all kept together and piled up, this whole world wouldn't be able to contain the bodies. It has also been said that if we were to compile all the tears that we have shed in search of happiness, but in order to get food, drinks, clothes, and to protect one's own family and so on, the amount of tears would be even more than the oceans we have. However, when we think of it normally, we can't actually conceive such things because we lack the clairvoyance or the capacity to look into the real situation.
Tendeji se lui lensin yane yondo korwandele kogire mato korwandele paro ne ngaso tatan rotugi mares.
So in such a manner, we keep coming back in this cyclic existence, taking different rebirths and forms, and never escape from this cyclic existence.
Te indi tata seneji pardon dela ta mamu bane dungar nyom bugyaji. Sano toyate ke chehuji tsegiores.
And it is at this stage, this Bardo, the real life Bardo, that we can make a decision to assure that we won't have to undergo the similar cycle of rebirth in the future.
Tanga penche serap thuma mebar daji padu ngarong soge ranong soso ji gepe ranong soso sereya ne meba bodong poma la so batandi yabo yongwa nyedong nyende tandi yabo yongwa rande ji samno kona tongne kansong korwandele chamdi yeres.
Then if we look at what brought about this cycle of rebirth, it is all because we were looking for ourselves. We were being selfish. We wanted to have food, clothes, drinks for ourselves, or to have our children grow up properly, or have our relatives be happy. So it's all connected to some selfish intention, and that is the reason why we have been taking rebirth in this cyclic existence.
Tata senne bongi badon dei kaso nasu ta drup goyade ta yone khawal chamma gabaji sano don ade kechi kujires.
And while we are in this real life Bardo, this intermediate state, it is very important to assure that we don't have to further this cycle of rebirth and to stop it.
Siang Bardo he yale degi tela kangar mombo jiro dungar mombo jiri re mato tele gensen se ke thong midus. Bardo di tola so mombo he ndulege pento tese miluas.
Generally, when you talk about the Bardo being full of fear and all the frightening appearances and things that we come across in the Bardo, there's not much effect unless you could really change this real life Bardo into something productive.
Bardo jinesur thune raon so ki dungaleta de samo ton de kechi varwas.
So having contemplated on the concept of Bardo, it is very important that one should aspire to be free from suffering.
Yena yong nga son ji demba ko ne ne minam lo tesam don demba khada ji do yichi ya ba meba yin kanga yore.
However, most of the people who are worldly are always dubious about such concepts, are always in a dilemma, and therefore they cannot pursue the freedom from suffering strongly.
Lama tso yinanda, kepa tso ki yinanda, peja non yuni yinanda, lo jupe mambo ji yores.
There are many such instances mentioned in the text through lamas, through scholars.
Yena yon tela o tende ndu samba ji re ma to degi nyong sta ne rong le yen le phet to yo ba ji pe nyong ba.
In most of these cases, although such concepts are being mentioned and taught, there are very few which are in fact becoming very effective for one's own self in being practical.
바디 내서나 몸보지 퇴나오 어떤다 진두 삼바지데 마도 랑기 코리 등알에 저트가 산노 동에디 백컴으로.
Although it's very common for people to hear about the concept of Bardo and know about it, the knowledge or the fact that they heard it doesn't always become effective in seeking freedom from this state of suffering for themselves. Most of the people are full of doubts about whether what is mentioned is true or not true. In such cases, the knowledge of some people with such doubt would be probably pedantic, scholarly systems, but in other sense, it is actually very sort of surprising or ironic. So to hit the point, for the real life Bardo, this state of Bardo, the Bardo we are in, the main purpose is to do something virtuous in order to stop suffering in the future. Whoever we may think of, high ones, low ones, or rich ones, poor ones, all these ancient beings, everybody always wants happiness. There's no one who doesn't want happiness, and there's no one who does want suffering. We are all in want of happiness and who doesn't want suffering. So it is very important in this sense to practice the Dharma. And it is very important to have faith and confidence in the law of cause and effect. Buddhist teachings are not something that has been taught with an intention to just amass scholarship or to bring about fame. Right from the beginning, when the Buddha taught it, he taught it out of an unbearable sense of compassion. It has been also taught that if one has this intention of bodhicitta, the altruistic intention to take all sentient beings to supreme enlightenment, then it becomes effective in leading oneself towards enlightenment. But if one doesn't have that intention, whatever one may do, it will still block enlightenment. And when we talk about bodhicitta, this altruistic intention to take all sentient beings to enlightenment, it is supposed to be impartial, supposed to be with equanimity. Whether it be celestial beings from the realms of the gods, or be human beings, or even as small as insects like ants, they are treated equally as sentient beings. And it also is taught in the Buddhist text that all the sentient beings have once been one's mother, one's parent.
데 가레스는 까르바 도메네 도메디 바드 코바네 참네 리롱 여바지레 리롱디 세네 게지노니 세네 숨데 파지 파마라 휴치야 땡가 버서가지레.
The concept is that in the Buddhist teachings, we have taken innumerable times of rebirth. And while we take rebirth, there are 4 ways of taking rebirth. Through womb, through moisture and heat and so on, through eggs, and then through some spontaneous arising. Of the 4, 3 depend on mothers.
What they in Pama Shepitu Kasu Sanchez Sudo Suyino Rangi Pula Cassette Chimbochers did Hakovas.
So, through this theory, we conclude that most of the sentient beings have become one's mothers. And while the sentient beings have become one's mother, it is an established fact. It's obvious how much a mother would care and look after the offspring.
Tata Najim Pama Najim Mad Trinchimo Mensang Yeris in the Tenkam.
It is true that there are some people who think their parents are not kind enough.
Matrinchimo Men around the Zupo Caneros.
If their mothers weren't kind enough, where did they get their body from?
Zuponi Yabati Nitendi counted Panjur Desil, like Jangi Togi, Zupon Mena Toya Kaima.
It's because we have a body that has been given by the mother that we also acquire all the other possessions and experience all the happiness.
They indeed. Pama Trinchimbo Yistananda, Mena Nestananda, then the Trinchimbo Karinchimbo. So,
whether one thinks one's mother is kind or unkind, the fact is that mothers are always kind. Even in case of people who have become so famous, who think they have done things that more than what their mothers gave, their body has been given by the mother. If, in case of people who think they are very wise and learned, it's all because of their mother. So whatever has arisen through dependence on the body that one has, those indirectly come from the mother. So the mothers are kind in that way.
Never you but the young took your mato, particularly now hit the la Durno get soon to yours. In our Tino lay the about Mrs. Togiers.
During the time of the conception, the consciousness of the being, which is conceived in a particular womb, has to have a connection with the mother, the person who carries the womb. It is said that in the state of Bardo, which is this gap between 2 lives, that there are consciousnesses crowded or running around for a womb, seeking a womb, just as there is dust sometimes. And in such a situation, out of all those consciousness seeking the womb, one particular would get into the womb, and that's because there is a connection. And when the mother conceives, the mother, because a child has been conceived, becomes so happy or bursts with joy.
세동 머치아데 부야 리시비순데 테그게바.
And beginning from such joy, she then has to, through her physical nourishment, bring up the child in the womb. And then when it comes to the state of birth, how much pain she has to go through. And having born, then she looks after the child just as her own heart. She would be willing to give up her own life for the sake of the child, if necessary. This is not just the case of human beings. Even if you look at the animals, we can see how affectionate and caring they are to their offspring. When there are harms being inflicted or things bad being done to the offsprings, one could see how much the mother tries to protect the offspring. There are many cases where the mother dies for the sake of the offspring, of the child. These are all proof of how much the mother loves the child or the offspring. So, thus we can deduce that mothers are extremely kind. So, we infer to this that the center, the pith of Dharma practice is to have such an altruistic intention, the sense of love. When one practices this altruistic intention of bodhicitta, one has to begin sometimes by having one's mother as the object. So beginning with one's mother as the primary object, one then applies the same attitude towards the rest of the sentient beings. Without having such focused, such intense feeling of love and affection, just thinking and assuming that one is practicing bodhicitta wouldn't help, even if one does that for 100 times. So this all we get from the fact that we have taken several rebirths, innumerable rebirths in the past. Now, during those rebirths, we have always failed to do anything that is altruistic, philanthropic, but have always been seeking selfish interests. And even at this stage, with this body, it is very rare to find people who are philanthropic, who are altruistic. There are a lot of people, so many, who are selfish. So if one continues with this self-interest, there's no way one could stop the cyclic existence. One will continue. And therefore one would be able to get the ultimate happiness.
Then, rangi dante, rangi dugures.
So one must seek one's own purpose, one's own interests. That is to say the ultimate happiness.
Sedi, the tata gondi shebagan, the tata seneji padon de caso, then do ya the kitchicures.
And that ultimate happiness can be sought effectively in this state, this real life intermediate state.
Pajek make it get a mombo doing is a hegres.
A lot of people say that they will accumulate lots of virtues and merits after the person has died.
When in there and the Yaboji Yana Pentogre matter them and Pento coverage.
If there's some effective link from the past, it may help, but otherwise, trying to accumulate merits for somebody who has already died wouldn't help.
Aragi Seneji Pado, my copon must sene, Higam marriage party, Seneji Padres.
So this Bardo that we have talked about, the first one, the Kenne Bardo, the living Bardo, the real life Bardo, is the one that begins from birth until we die.
Then
we have the Bardo, the intermediate state of death, of suffering death.
Chembotep, Mantu last of a Turkey Garrison at Rod, Turkey Zoya May. Natanita, here I may take up at the figures.
So that stage is when we have things like physical ailments which can't be cured, like such causes of death which should bring about the death. And the time when the death comes, it is the Bardo of the death. So for those who don't believe in the future life, probably it's a great fun. But because there is this law of cause and effect, it will certainly be ripening on them sometime in the future. And the gravity of suffering one feels at the time of the death is also dependent on the amount of virtues and negative actions that one accumulates in the real state of life. When our body was first formed, it forms through the 5 elements, that's to say earth, water, air, fire, and ether or space. And when we live, it's through depending on these 5 elements that we continue living. And when we die, it is the dissolution of these 5 elements. At the time of the death, as the physical body denigrates or starts to dissolve, when the chakra at the navel, the spiritual channel network at the navel starts to break away, then the earth element starts to dissolve into the water element. At that point, one would lose the physical strength. such that one wouldn't be able to stand on one's own limbs. One wouldn't be able to use one's hands to pick food and feed oneself, and so on.
Zuboji Dong le Tropa Chow, Sole Sonti Nabo Chow,
and the glow, the hue one has, the hue of the glow of the skin would start to fade, and we would probably we would get a rather dim, dark color, and there would be dirt accumulating and sort of tarnishing the color of the teeth. And then after that, the network of channels at the heart starts to degrade. And at that point, the water element starts to dissolve into the fire element.
Kanale chumba la suba. Zuboji donda tanje ma nyam dogres.
At that point, one would start to lose, one would start to become dry. There wouldn't be any water in the mouth, and the skin would start to sort of get dry.
And
then after that, the network of the channels at the throat starts to break down. Then at that point, one wouldn't be able to speak properly. One would lose the power of speech. Even if one could say a little bit, one would be stuttering and shaking. So at that time, the fire element dissolves into the air element. And at that stage, after that stage, the channels, the nerves of the lower orifices would all start to dysfunction. And at that time, the vital air of cyclic karma, the cyclic existential karma vital air, sitpa leke long, a particular kind of vital air among the 5 vital airs that are in our body, that is being, that dissolves, that is being lost. So at that stage, one would start to lose breath. One wouldn't be able to have long breaths, and they will start if one has breath, they would start to become short.
Then
after that, at that stage, the element at that stage, the element of the air dissolves into the element of space. And at that stage, one would lose the sensitivity and awareness, and the consciousness will start to withdraw. One wouldn't be able to see things properly, and even if one sees, there will be some very vague pictures that one wouldn't be able to recognize.
Junga nga tamchiji ma nyamni telepata sosonda chene hirogerabas.
So this is how the 5 elements of the body start to decay and dissolve.
The kaula palato bitile carbo hangi number shioni tile tanti tomara diores.
Then it is said that the essence of the white fluid that we get from one's father's side is said to be on one's crown. It's the very, very essence of the essence, the quintessential of the fluid. Because of the loss of energy and physical strength, that essence of the fluid would start to descend down to the heart. The kind of experience one gets at that point is of brightness and of intense light, as if there are hundreds and thousands of suns shining at the same time. And then it is said that one has the vital essence of the white fluid, the red fluid, the blood that one acquires, that one gets from the mother's side, and that in the shape of a syllable A is at the navel. And that fluid rises up, soars up towards the heart. And at that time, there's again this experience of extreme light, but not so much of heat, that it would be more like the feeling that there are so many moons arising at the same time. And when these two fluids meet at the heart, and the consciousness gets sort of trapped in these two, and when this convergence happens, one gets the feeling of just being blown out of a very dark, dull, dissipating experience. Sort of being blown out is the best, I think. And at that point, all the negative emotions one has of hatred, of lust and passion, of ignorance, all ceases to exist. So then the consciousness is sort of blown out. It becomes totally unconscious sort of state, and one remains in the state of unconsciousness, of some sort of a fit. So the stage, the intermediate state of suffering death, the death with suffering, is the one that begins with the ailment that brings about the death, all the way up to this point where the consciousness is sort of knocked out.
Yong Tapa Nyansun Lemi, Gonza Tamji, Di Nane, Sendele, Ya Tortogaji, Gonza de Siu no Machepi Hune, Mr. Chile Nyansun Lemi Gabi Gonza de, Igeni, Ya Tortogere, Tela, Bardo Yamaris.
For those individuals who practice Dharma so strongly in this life, who actually attains enlightenment in this lifetime, they don't have to cross that stage of Bardo. They get enlightenment before that state. So if one had the instructions on the reality of one's mind, who actually attains enlightenment in this lifetime, they don't have to cross that stage of Bardo. They get enlightenment before that state. So if one had the instructions on the reality of one's mind, of mind-pointing instructions, and practiced it, then at that point, when all the emotions stops, one will be able to recognize the reality and become a Buddha. Such people, such individuals are individuals with a high capacity of realization, a high caliber. So after that, when one recovers from this kind of unconscious state, they start to abide in the state of the ground primordial consciousness or primordial wisdom, the gnosis of the ground. Now, if one has practiced the Trekche aspect of Dzogchen practice, Trekche, which literally means something like cutting through practice, which has to do with the mind-pointing instructions and meditation on the reality of the mind. If one has done such practices very effectively in this life, one would be able to recognize the state of this ground gnosis, or this primordial wisdom of the ground, and one will get liberated. If one doesn't recognize this state of, if one doesn't recognize this wisdom of the ground, this ground primordial wisdom, then one starts to one starts to get confused, and they start to go worse. So after this stage, if somebody has done the Tögal, the transience, the crossing over practice of Dzogchen, then one would experience the appearances, the empirical signs of the Tögal practice at that point. And it is at this stage that if one had the internal practices, the internal capacity to manifest, one will see the appearances of the 5 family Buddhas. First one will see the sky blue light which is blue in color, in center of 5 other different color rays. And that is like the blessing of the Buddha Vairocana, the Buddha in the center. Now, if one had with a strong, if one is accustomed to the practice, then one would be able to recognize the Buddhas as one's own personal deity, and thereby one would be able to get liberated. And after that, one experiences the white light, which is the ray emanating through the blessings from the heart of the Buddha Vajrasattva. And if one recognizes the Buddha as such, then one will be able to liberate. And after that, one will have experienced the light which is yellow in color, which is associated with the Buddha Ratna Sambhava, Rinchen Junglen. And if one recognizes that, one will again be liberated.
Was a marble, or was a trot, Sambu Tile Masam Yagat, no other performance.
And after that, there is the light which is red in color from the Buddha Amitabha, which, if one recognizes, one will again get liberated. Now, all these rays, Rinpoche emphasizes, is extremely radiant and have the 5 different circles of light in different colors to indicate the 5 family Buddhas in all of them. And after the red, then there is the light which is green in color of the Buddha Amoga Siddhi, and which will be in the same manner. And if one recognizes that, one will get liberated. And after the 5th one, there is also a possibility, or it happens that there will be all the 5 different lights in 5 different colors appearing at the same time. So with these 5 different lights from the 5 different Buddha families, if one has already practiced properly during the lifetime, one would be able to recognize them, and also the appearance would be longer. But for those who are not accustomed to it, they wouldn't last. So for those who are not, who haven't practiced during their lifetime, these appearances would be very momentary. They would disappear instantly.
There are also the sentence the young Yeremado touched it chudung a conale maret, the Yenao,
the experience or the appearance of such lights are common, or are they appear to all the sentient beings. It's not just to the people who have practiced that they appear, but the capacity of recognizing it, the capabilities of recognizing it and elongating it is totally dependent on how much one is used to it through practice. So for those who are not used to the practice, the appearances would be just a flash for an instant, and they wouldn't be able to grasp anything. So if we talk about a person who is dead, these appearances, the experiences that we have talked about until now, occurs during the first week. Then after that stage, the appearances are totally dependent on the individual propensities. But generally speaking, it is said that there will be the peaceful deities of the death, of the peaceful 40 peaceful deities appearing. So the peaceful deities appear during the third week, and after that until the sixth week, the wrathful deities would appear. But at that stage, there is so much difficulty in getting liberated. Because when one encounters or has this experience of the wrathful deities, they are very much like the messengers of the death. They are wrathful and terrifying. So one wouldn't be able to see them as deities. It is just like the case where if there is a horde of robbers coming into the house, and then there are also some other gang trying to protect you, you won't be able to recognize who is who, and you'll be scared of both. In the same way, when you have this experience with wrathful deities, although they are deities to protect you, because of their appearance, one would be terrified and wouldn't actually recognize them as deities. And if it is true that if one recognizes the deities as deities, it is possible to get liberated, but it is difficult to recognize them as deities in such circumstances. But for those individuals who practice very well in this lifetime and are accustomed to such appearances, it would be very easy and good for them. It's the habituation which becomes effective. But if one is not used to such appearances, then such wrathful appearances wouldn't be of any help. But because of the karmic propensities, such appearances will definitely appear to all the sentient beings. It is taught that the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities are already inherent in one's own body right now. So when the body dissolves at the time of the death, they all sort of get projected, and therefore we get the appearance of the peaceful and wrathful deities.
Dering I choose somebody in a shituna. Pardon, Kyabje no I chatted younger was.
If suppose that I were to die at 3 today, then I would be having all this experience of the Bardo.
She did mission Shabo did it. There is a Nimat to the somebody here. You must that Nimat to the somebody young, do not chat on the young Buddhists.
If one died at 3 p.m. on Sunday, then the next Sunday, exactly the same time, one would again have the same repetition of this experience.
That Shabo get to hear good about doing so Shabo did it on the Chason did it young with it.
And for 49 days, it is said that every week, after every week, one would have this appearance, this experience.
Yet to hear good songs and the deeds and the children of flowers, me said, do it again, me said, and done it.
So, for Tibetans, when they have funeral rites for 49 days and always observe the 7th day of since the death, it is because of this reason that they do it.
The captain only, dying about it, she was taking fun, it depends on you.
So at that particular point, that weekly point, if one does some rituals or reads some text, and if there is a strong link, if that dead soul, that individual, could receive the message, if there is a link, then there will be some impact on the dead person.
Now he dead on it, the dog who are Tundo to got it 3 years. Now he dead on then now he sent the cool, she don't make him more Mahira in Lava again. Did it have but do not a young hero? Memen. Kalam Malon along on the church, now he done over. That's the song out of the Shea she ever only wrong or machine. Or the next name at it, but do not on the back of the younger.
It is after the projection of the different lights that we have talked about as the 2 different vital essences move and coalesce. Now, at that time you fall unconscious. And until that stage, most of the people, ordinary people, wouldn't even know whether they're dead or not. And it's only after that stage that one has to experience the suffering of the death.
Then it also non so young, don't the chin young, the messaging Kaya Majeva dedicated, or could do not control Sagres.
So the individuals who gains consciousness again, the consciousness which comes back from that unconscious state, wouldn't still know that they are dead. And therefore, when one sees one's family members or relatives or friends, because one is dead, one would think, one would know that one is dead, but other people, one would think, are ignoring one. So one would get extremely frustrated for not being able to interact properly. Other people would be seen to be mourning the death of the person, but the person would try to prove or show that he is not dead. And so in this way, the consciousness of the dead person, not recognizing that it is dead, sometimes you would have all kinds of experience of suffering, that sometimes because of the the dissolution of the element of the earth, it would be having feelings or experiences such like being pressed under a huge mountain or under some landslide. And because of the dissolution of the water element, he would get this experience of being carried away by rivers, of drowning in the river. Because of the dissolution of the fire element, you would get this extremely hot sensations, as if he is being burnt alive. And because of the dissolution of the air, you would get this experience of being very light and being blown away and being crushed. So one then gets this experience of seeing all these external elements as being destructive to oneself. If one hears sound, then the sound effect would be such that it would be as if there are 1,000 lightning or thunder at the same time, and as if one's eardrums would burst. And it is after these kind of experiences that it gradually sinks into oneself that one might be already dead. And when the fact that one has already been dead sinks in, the fear and the suffering increases. After 3 weeks, one until the third week, until the end of the third week, one would have the feeling of having the same body as one had during the lifetime. The living people won't see him, but he gets the feeling that he still has the same body. Then after the end of the third week, after the 21st day since the death, he will have the feeling of whatever body he is supposed to acquire in the future life, and the feeling of the future life will become stronger for him. Then there are also the lights, the 6 different lights associated with the 6 different realms of sentient beings that will appear.
Danku, Marbo, Duka, or Tendesi Kadona do the Carriers. Was there Mebati in the Carriers?
And there will be these lights which wouldn't have any radiance, but which has these colors of white, green, yellow, dark blue, and so on. When the immensely radiant light associated with the 5 family Buddhas appear, one gets frightened and would avoid it. But when the rather dim light associated with the 6 different realms of the rebirth appear, one would be accepting it. One would be one would be able to cope up with it. If one were to take rebirth in the realm of the gods and the realm of the human beings, one would get this experience of walking on 2 feet. So for the gods and human beings, one has the feeling of walking upright. But if one were to take rebirth in the demigod, sort of anti-god realm, and the realm of the animals, then one would have the experience of walking across on 4 limbs. And if one were to take birth in the hungry ghost realm and the hell realms, one would have the experience of walking upside down with one's head on the ground. So at that stage, then, it is dependent on one's own previous karma. Depending on one's karma, one will take the track to these 6 different realms. However, even at such stage, if one is conscious enough to make prayers to the Buddhas, to one's Guru, one would be able to liberate from the lower realms and the bad results. But it is extremely difficult then. There is a practice of blocking all the other tracks, all the other ways or roads to the realms, non-human realms, and of diverting the consciousness towards a human rebirth. But it is a very difficult state.
So, control it, from the sound on the what say the
at that point, it is extremely important and to have faith in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, his teachings, and the Sangha, and to pray, to supplicate one's Guru.
Now, Papa Shere de la Soba, Sonji Sonsen Mamboji, Tervilan, Dember de Mambo, Shangiris.
There is definitely a lot of these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, such as Avalokiteshvara, who would come to help in order to lead you towards a happier rebirth.
Yena Konambi, Tuji Shinlavdon, Ron Suzuki, Deva Begin Devayana, Pento here, Nato Demena, Pento Ericari Favoris.
However, if there is a strong link between the deity and oneself, through having faith in the deity, when the deity shows compassion, then one would be able to be benefited. But if there isn't such a link, it would be very difficult to be of any help. It's not the case that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, his precious jewels, don't have compassion. They do, but when one doesn't have the faith in them and the trust in them, their compassion cannot work. If, for example, there were no fish in the river, trying to go fishing, and throwing the hook wouldn't help, wouldn't get a fish. If there is a fish, then the hook would stick to it, and one would get the fish. So the compassion of the Buddhas are always there, like the analogous to the hook. But if one doesn't have the faith, which is like the wish, then there wouldn't be any link between the compassion and oneself. In the past, there's this story that Captain Migyur Doje, who is the discoverer of the Namche cycle, has been down to the hell to help the sentient beings there. There are some sentient beings who he could help, he said, but most of them can't be helped. When he started showing compassion by reciting spells of mantras, such as the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, then a lot of the sentient beings would start attacking him, accusing him of invoking evil spells on them, and they would accuse him of doing something bad to them through those spells. So he said that when he could recite the mantra of Avalokiteshvara in tune so loudly, one could help some or a little bit to these hell beings, but it's extremely difficult to do any great benefit. And he said that getting exasperated and frustrated with the reaction he got for singing the mantras to the beings, he just set the mantras on rocks and soil on earth, and then put the soil onto the flames in the hell realm, and that helped reduce the heat or blow out the fire. It is said that the Avalokiteshvara Buddha has made a promise that he will liberate all the sentient beings without even leaving one sentient being behind in the cyclic existence. Going down to this mountain, the Drudzin Potala mountain, which is attributed to the Buddha Avalokiteshvara, he recited 100 billion mantras, his own mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. And he has managed to take all these ancient beings from certain world realms for 3 times. So having emptied the world for 3 times, he came back again thinking that there wouldn't be any sentient beings left by now. But then, in fact, he found more.
This is two humble. Aka sentence come the tomba say never is
that completely discouraged him and disappointed him, and even made him think that it's probably impossible to take all the sentient beings to enlightenment.
Then the Thomas sentence come to never come cover tomba saying so on the dungeon they go about the dungeon that my lose chover.
So his promise that he made initially to enlighten all the sentient beings was lost, or it became, he couldn't keep the promise. And because he broke his promise, he had this promise that he'll liberate all the sentient beings, and then he again gave way to the thought that he can't actually do that, and because of that for breaking his promise, as a sort of retribution, his head split into 100 parts and his body into 1,000 parts. So he was suffering from pain as his body and head split, and then the Buddha Amitabha came down to see him and said, aren't you having this pain because you broke your samaya, because you broke your promise? So, and then Chenji wept because he, Avalokiteshvara wept because he broke his promise, and two teardrops trickled down, and those teardrops then manifested as the green and the white Tara.
Green Tara,
the green and the white Tara, and then it was and those two Taras were assigned the task of liberating all the sentient beings. And his head, which had split into 100 parts, Amitabha blessed it and created 11 heads, turned them into 11 heads, and that's why you have the Avalokiteshvara with 11 heads. And Amitabha also blessed and turned his body, which split into 1,000 parts, into 1,000 arms with eyes on them. And then Avalokiteshvara manifested from his 1,000 eyes 1,000 so the 1,000, through the 1,000 hands he manifested 1,000 universal monarchs, universal kings, emperors, and then through the 1,000 eyes on the palms of those hands he manifested the 1,000 Buddhas. So in this manner he has been serving or benefiting the world. So one could say that it is very important for us to practice from one's own side, to practice Dharma and to have confidence in the law of cause and effect. Because I'm a Buddhist teacher, I talk a lot about Buddhism.
Yena Tamjiji there's a tent over Chido, Tamjiji Jella, Shonti ceremony Shiraji.
However, I do have a fervent hope that what I say would be of some help and benefit to others, and that it would instill the altruistic intention of benefiting others. Whoever we may be, we all want happiness. And of the happinesses, temporary happiness is not very good. Being attached to this world and all the temporary pleasures one gets from this world aren't any good. They won't last ultimately. However, although these worldly goals that we seek aren't really good, because of the karmic tendencies, one is accustomed to see the worldly affairs, worldly activities as sort of easy, as something that is good, something that wouldn't disappoint and discourage us. Even if we toil on since the birth until we die, we never get this feeling of remorse and disappointment with carrying on the worldly affairs. But if we engage in dharmic practice, even if we practice for 1 hour, we think we have done a long time. That's our reality, that's our nature. If we keep such nature, it's difficult to attain any ultimate happiness. There is nothing ultimate that we can really seek in this cyclic existence. But if we practice Dharma, then there is something ultimate, an enlightenment which we can achieve.
Thank you.
So that's about it. That's all. I don't have much to say.
Okay. Good night.